Tuesday, April 11th, 2017, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So it's around 12:20 p.m. London time, so around 7:20 Eastern Daylight Time in the U.S. I want to talk a little bit, excuse me, about the markets and also geopolitics, U.S. foreign policy, what's going on in the world right now as regards to U.S., Russia, China, and also a little bit about the new administration in the U.S., President Trump, and a lot of things I've been hearing that seem quite weird and strange, even though not surprising to me. One thing I like to say, I think there's a lot of uncertainty and confusion as regards to foreign policy right now, especially with the events in Syria, with what's going on between the U.S. and Russia, regarding Syria, what's going on with the U.S. and China regarding North Korea. Very confusing in my opinion. The markets as well are fairly, I would say, fairly quiet at the moment. As I speak here, gold is up a little bit, is at $1257.50, up about $3 from the 6 p.m. New York close. Silver is kind of disappointing, hasn't been able to get back above 18. It's at 17.93 right now. The high to this morning in London is $18 round, right there on that level. The low is 17.90. We really need to get back above 18 to see gold, and that would help gold also break back above 1260 and hopefully 1270. Currency-wise, markets are fairly steady. Pound is a little stronger against the dollar, not much. And same thing for the euro. But the dollar is weak against the yen here. It's down 1/3% at 110.60. The low is 110.45. That 110 level still seems to be holding right now for the dollar. So as the dollar drops there against the yen, that means the yen's getting stronger. Stock market not doing much at all here. The Dow is basically unchanged. S&P down 2 points at 2354.1%. Yeah, so in terms of economics, we had Yellen. She spoke yesterday and she reiterated that the Fed expects to continue raising interest rates. There has been talk about winding down the Fed's balance sheet as well. Dudley from the New York Fed said it could happen this year, but it will most probably happen next year. I think it's just talk by the Fed. I was also a little bit, it was a bit like silly what I heard from Yellen yesterday. She said the Fed wants to make sure it stays ahead of the curve. I mean, that's like saying, an alcoholic saying, oh, he's only going to have 10 cans of beer today because he wants to stay ahead of the curve. The Fed's been flooding the system with funny money, with QE and zero interest rates for almost a decade. And for her to come out and say she wants to stay ahead of the curve is a joke, in my opinion. What else? Well, yesterday I listened a little bit to Alex Jones of InfoWars, and he was talking about the Trump administration and what's happening in Syria. And even he said that he's confused. He has no clue what's going on. So that just goes to show that there's a lot of uncertainty out there. Personally, in terms of the Trump administration, what's happening, it seems a little bit, I don't want to jump the gun, but historically, I've read about how in the 1932 election between Roosevelt and Herbert Hoover, Hoover was the guy, the president from 29, elected in 28, was president during the crash and the start of the Depression. And he was, people, when they look back, they think that Hoover was the guy who was a non-interventionist, a guy who didn't want to interfere in the economy or intervene. But he actually did. He did a lot of he did a lot of fiscal policy to try to help the economy out of the Great Depression, even though he was a Republican. And then Roosevelt actually ran on a platform of non-interventionism, small government, balancing the books, and then he became president. He did the complete opposite. He came out with a New Deal. He instituted the bank holiday, took the U.S. off the gold standard domestically, and increased the size of government massively. That's the New Deal. Basically, is the beginning of the U.S. Welfare state, so to speak. So, you got someone who was elected to, and people thought he was going to do one thing, and he did completely the opposite. The other president that comes to mind is George W. Bush. I remember him very well during his campaign, saying that he wanted to have a non-interventionist foreign policy, that he would, he didn't want America to be, intervening abroad in wars and stuff. And look what happened. I know there's 9/11, but that's a different story. But he became, he invaded Afghanistan, Iraq. So complete opposite of what he campaigned for. So, and now with Trump, he said he campaigned for, America first. I know he campaigned to say that America is going to show strength, but he didn't want to be involved, with the with all the intervention. He said he didn't agree with the war in Iraq. And now we're starting to see this, all these hot spots coming up. And President Trump, acting maybe as a President Hillary Clinton would act. There's so much talk right now about, World War III, North Korea, U.S. has sent, naval forces to the Korean Peninsula. Now China has moved, supposedly, according to South Korean news sources, China's moved 150,000 troops to the, border with North Korea. It's almost as if, and now Russia saying, if the Americans bomb Syria again or intervene, that means, that they're going to get involved. You could have a military conflict between Russia and the U.S. So nothing's happened yet, I guess, so to speak. So I'm not going to say, Trump was elected and on a platform of, globalization, and he's actually done the exact opposite. A lot of talk about his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who seems to be taking charge of a lot of, the policy. He's now in charge of Middle East peace. He's hired a lot of globalists from Goldman Sachs. He's like a registered Democrat. So very strange situation. I'm not surprised. I know I did, think Trump might be, a good president for the U.S. With all the rhetoric he came out with in the campaign, and all this talk about draining the swamp and fighting for, the American individual, not big corporations. I don't know. Is the Trump administration being hijacked by the globalists? I don't know. Difficult to say, but it doesn't look good. So yeah, with that in mind, I think there's a lot of uncertainty also here in the UK with the Brexit, with the French elections coming up in about 10 days. That's going to create a lot of uncertainty as well. I've been around for a while. I haven't seen as much uncertainty as this in a long time. And what worries me is all the talk about war with US, Russia, China. Very interesting times. Is it the end of Pax Americana? And I would say Pax Americana is the period from 1944, I would say for myself, until now. It's the period where America took over really as the major power in the world. I think, there was Pax Britannica after the Napoleonic Wars until 1914 when World War I started, and between 1918 and 1944 you could say it was like a transitional period. The British Empire was still fairly powerful but declining quickly, and the Americans were coming up. Is this all being engineered by the big powers of the world, the United States, Russia, and China? Is it being engineered, artificially? And they're are they trying to make us, the public, believe that there's real conflict? And with that, they're gonna pass on to another Pax, maybe a Pax tripolar, with US, Russia, and China being in charge? Or am I wrong and we're going to continue seeing Pax Americana? And I think it's pretty important to think about this because, the financial architecture of the world was in shambles, I would say, between the end of World War I and 1944 and the Bretton Woods. So they had to reset everything with Bretton Woods, and the dollar became the reserve currency. The pound took a back seat. So that's how I think we could see what's happening now be important to currencies, and especially the US dollar, and that would indirectly affect precious metals, gold and silver. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but there's that cover of the Economist magazine in 1988 saying that by 2018 we'd have a new global currency, the Phoenix, and there's like a gold coin on the cover, and all the paper currencies burning up. I guess all the debt that we have created, in the West and even in China now, all the derivatives, all the, it's hampering growth in the world. So that could be, one of the reasons, they'll bring up some kind of conflict, and that will give the powers that be an excuse to, basically rip the architecture apart, the Pax Americana architecture, and start again from scratch. We'll have to see. I don't have a crystal ball, but if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, share it far and wide, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and I'd be really grateful if you could donate any amount of money to the channel to help the channel, as little as $1 on Patreon, or I accept Bitcoin, PayPal, and Patreon. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.